This is my childhood copy of Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. It's a pretty special game to me. Before the release of the remake, I thought I'd replay my childhood cartridge on the analog Super NT. A very handy device if, like myself, you still happen to own your Super Nintendo cartridges. It's where most of the footage you're seeing in this video originates from. And my old childhood save files are still on the cartridge. I should really back these up actually. At the time of its release, I did have a little bit of experience within the RPG genre, but I have played nothing quite like this one. A Super Mario role-playing game. It was a collaborative effort between Squaresoft, the creators of Final Fantasy, and Nintendo, released in 1996 on the 16-bit Super Nintendo console. The two companies had quite a close relationship during the 8 and 16-bit eras, so surely this would be the start of a beautiful partnership. Well, sadly, no. When Square decided not to release the next installment of Final Fantasy on the upcoming Nintendo 64, and instead the Sony PlayStation, it did cause a fallout between the two companies. There have been many stories regarding said fallout, but either way, the two companies stopped working with each other for many years. Final Fantasy wouldn't appear on a Nintendo console again until 2004. Unfortunately, Nintendo did burn a few bridges with many of their former allies due to their insistence of sticking with the expensive cartridge-based format. So it was a shame, but even without Square's involvement, that didn't stop Super Mario from appearing in many more RPG spin-off titles. In fact, it was to be the first of many. Mario has had quite a long and successful career within the RPG genre. The games you're seeing here are my personal top picks for the best of the Mario RPGs. First of all, we have the Paper Mario series by Intelligent Systems, featuring hilarious dialogue and memorable characters, and a unique battle system that took place within a giant stage play. These are great games, although I'm not too keen on some of the later installments that started removing the RPG gameplay elements. Next up we have the Mario & Luigi titles by developer Alpha Dream, and I think all 5 of them are pretty fun. The first and third installments would even be remade for the Nintendo 3DS. As great as they are, I do tend to struggle a little wrapping my head around that simultaneous gameplay of the brothers. Mario's actions are assigned to button A and Luigi as button B. And of course I should at least mention the RPG career modes within those earlier Mario sports titles. But you know, I think out of all of these games it's still the original on Super Nintendo which is still my absolute favourite. It just has such great gameplay. The time button presses of the battle system was pretty unique for its time. It felt so much more involved than the more standard RPG menu-based systems. Timed button presses or button combinations in the battle system would become a mainstay of nearly every Mario RPG title since. And you know, it took me forever to realise that the battle command system is actually colour-coded after a Super Nintendo controller. There are still a few simplistic platforming sequences to overcome. This is still a Super Mario game after all, although that isometric viewpoint can occasionally make a few jumps feel harder than they should be. There are a ton of mini-games to participate in, though I would hardly call any of them outstanding. But it was still a nice way to mix up that gameplay a little. And the RPG gameplay mechanics are far more streamlined here. Flower points represent the magic system, and is shared between all party members. You'll always have plenty of items, too many actually. Any status ailments you may suffer during battle are instantly reset at the end of each round, and the game will even randomly award you with temporary stat boosts. Admittedly, this does all lead to making Mario RPG being a rather easy game to complete. But it was perfect for a beginner like myself who, at the time, still didn't quite get the genre. I would run away from most battles because I just wanted to get back to exploring, and completely ignoring the whole concept of leveling up your characters. It did make some of these battles quite tricky for me. But I sure was proud of myself being able to beat that secret optional boss, Culex. Speaking of secrets, it felt like the game was packed full of them. Mario's adventures have always included hidden secrets to discover, and Super Mario RPG is no different. You'll also want to keep an eye out for these hidden frog coins too. They can be exchanged for some of the best items in the game. Finding some of these was especially tough considering I didn't have access to the internet at the time. For example, this hidden frog coin from the start of the game. You'll only ever be able to access it when Toad walks through the castle foyer to speak to the Chancellor. If you don't jump off a Toad here, you'll never have the opportunity to earn this coin again, forever dashing your hopes of earning that 100% completion. Naturally, there are a few ultimate weapons to find, and an aforementioned extra boss battle. There was this strange mandatory logic puzzle which left me stumped for weeks. I remember asking my parents for help and even they didn't have a clue. But perhaps most infamous of them all is finding the location of the Great Guy Casino. All you have to do is return to Booster's Tower after rescuing the princess and find the Knife Guy. Win his guessing game 12 times to receive the Bright card. Once you reach Bean Valley, travel down this pipe and defeat the Gold Chain Chomp. Don't worry, it's a pretty easy battle. Jump 3 times to make this invisible platform appear. Now with your Bright card in hand, you'll have access to the casino. But that's not all. Play a game of Look the Other Way with Great Guy and win 100 times. This should take roughly 45 minutes. And you'll finally be awarded the Star Egg, a reusable battle item that deals 100 hit points worth of damage every time. Simple, no? It's one of those games that really captured my imagination when I was younger. I was convinced it was hiding more than it actually was. There was an amazing soundtrack by composer Yoko Shimura. She's had quite a stellar career. From her humble beginnings working at Capcom, to the likes of Xenoblade and Kingdom Hearts. Surely the most iconic song of the game would be The Forest Maze. I remember just leaving my Super Nintendo on just so I could listen to it again. There is some fantastic music in this game, no doubt, although I do wish there was just a little more variation in the battle theme. You'll be hearing the same song throughout the entire adventure, and it can start to get a little grating. The graphics looked incredible for their time, using a similar pre-rendered style popularised by that of Donkey Kong Country. I genuinely thought it looked amazing seeing Super Mario appear on almost photorealistic backgrounds. The game was released before the launch of the Nintendo 64, so it was still pretty exciting to see Mario in a semi-3D sort of look. I think the character designs look quite charming. There's many memorable characters here. In particular, it's the monster design that always stood out to me. While there are still the typical assortment of Mario villains to contend with, Goombas, Paratroopers, Hammer Bros, Bloobers, Bob-ombs, Chain Chomps, and Gobbies to name a few. They were always called that, weren't they? And the game still included many unique character designs of its own. They look so unusual and slightly out of place for a Super Mario game. Undead mammoths, knife-wielding clowns. Is that a boob jiggle in a Mario game? Some of the original design sketches look downright creepy. In fact, there's a very strange vibe about this game overall. An almost self-mocking tone about it, and it had a great sense of humour. A lot of said humour is directed entirely at the plumber himself. It's pretty amazing to see this in a Nintendo game. Later Mario RPG titles would focus that humour more so on Luigi, but I think I prefer this roasting of Mario here. Come on, he kinda deserves it. This game does get pretty weird. I can't help but wonder how the remake will handle specific scenes such as Bowser giving Mario a kiss, or Booster licking the salty crying tears off the princess's face, making a CG 4K cutscene. And finally we come to the story and characters. I know story has hardly ever mattered in a Mario game before, but Super Mario RPG really did feel like the first time I had experienced a Mario game with just a little bit more story. At this point in the franchise, the only real dialogue expressed between the characters came from very brief cutscenes. Or comic books. I used to love these when I was younger. Or a popular cartoon series. You see, back then I would take whatever little scrap of Mario content I could get.
Hooper, where's the princess? She's playing in the sand.
Mario is on a quest to retrieve the 7 star pieces of the magical Star Road. If the Star Road isn't repaired, the inhabitants of Super Mario World will never have their wishes come true. The star pieces have scattered across the land, and Mario and friends must prevent them from falling into the hands of a brand new foe, Smithy. A fearsome mechanical blacksmith from another dimension that seeks to take over the Mushroom Kingdom with his army of weapons. There was a real sense of mystery about him, since you never actually saw what he looked like until the very end of the game. It may all sound a little twee, I know, but the story thankfully never takes itself too seriously. You will only be collecting 6 star pieces in your quest, as Smithy holds the final piece, and rather strangely, no boss battle in Star Hill. You're simply awarded the star, it's just kind of lying there. Always found that a bit strange. Still, there were some great story moments here for this Mario fanboy to enjoy. Seeing Bowser begrudgingly team up with Mario to take on Smithy was incredible to see. I really do think this is the game that defined his personality. Bowser would easily become a highlight of many a Mario RPG. Likewise, while the princess has had a couple of playable roles over the years, it was just as exciting to see her join you in battle, armed with Parasol or Frying Pan. We were also introduced to 2 brand new heroes. Mallow, a Nimbus creature who wielded powerful magic. I always thought he was based on those smiling cloud backdrops from throughout the Mario series. And my personal favourite, the Star Warrior, Geno. A wooden doll brought to life by the magical power of the Star Road, and serves as its protector. I always thought that was directly referencing Super Mario World. A little bit of world building in a Mario game, how exciting. This game certainly had some great characters for sure. But much to my childhood disappointment, Yoshi only inhibits a very minor role. Luigi on the other hand is almost completely absent. Poor Luigi, he's mostly relegated to cameo appearances and acts as your guide in the official game manual. Wouldn't it be great if in the remake they added in an extra hard mode where they swap Mario with Luigi? The English translation was once again provided by Ted Woosley, who localised most of Square's output during the mid-90s. And I think it was an excellent fit for the more goofy tone of Super Mario. So a few flaws aside, I love this game. In fact, I think Super Mario RPG is one of my favourite ever RPGs. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons I regard it so highly is because it happens to be one of the very first RPGs I completed. And one of the very first video games I ever imported. You see, I'm a European gamer myself, and the game never actually released over here in Europe. Or at least not on the Super Nintendo console. The role-playing genre was still very niche at the time. That worldwide breakout success of Final Fantasy VII was still a year or so away, and by 1996 I suppose the Super Nintendo was already in its twilight years. Perhaps Nintendo felt most of the gaming populace had already moved on to newer hardware, and the exciting world of 3D polygons. Or perhaps they simply didn't have the time or resources available to optimise the game to run correctly at the slower refresh speed of PAL 50Hz. Yeah, thanks for that, Nintendo. So sadly, the game just seemed to pass us by. But for myself, a Super Mario fanboy, I was determined not to miss out on Mario's latest adventure. I had been closely following the game in magazines. I was becoming more interested in the import gaming scene due to reading issues of the Superplay magazine here. And it would eventually lead me to ordering my copy from a local independent retailer. To get it working on my PAL format Super Nintendo, I also needed to order one of these. An NTSC to PAL cartridge converter. I didn't own many of my own Super Nintendo games back then, they were pretty expensive. But all of this combined made it the most expensive video game I had ever bought at the time. Here, I'll show you how it works. I'll just set up my old PAL format Super Nintendo here. You just plug the game into the adapter. And next we need a PAL cartridge. I can't think of a game that practically screams PAL version than good old Asterix. We simply slot Asterix into the back here. Presumably this was to fool the system into thinking it was still playing a PAL format game. Insert it into the console. Switch it on, of course. And it doesn't work. This is where you have to try a random combination of cartridges. It is a horrendously finicky process, and yes, this is exactly what I had to go through back in 1996. Do try to be careful with your cartridges. But eventually, or hopefully, you should be able to get it working. That's Super Mario RPG running on a PAL format Super Nintendo. Thank you, Out to Lunch. What a great game. Unfortunately, the PAL Super Nintendo will still play at a slower speed, so some of the music timing is going to be a little bit off. Going back to it now, it's like everything plays in slow motion. Well, I certainly didn't care at the time. It was amazing being able to play this game on my console, and I was the envy of many of my friends. Of course, nowadays, instead of playing it on my PAL format Super Nintendo, there are thankfully far better ways for me to play this game. It may have been a major hassle back then, but in a strange way, I kinda miss those days. Importing a mysterious video game from abroad, or reading about them in a magazine was pretty exciting. So thank you Super Mario RPG for all those fond memories, and introducing me to the horrendously expensive world of video game imports. Well, that's all we have time for today. If you made it this far into the video, then thanks ever so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and wanted to see more like it, then please consider giving a like or subscribing to the channel. I am still relatively new to YouTube, but I would like to continue growing the channel and make even more content. So until then, I hope I catch you in the next video. Take care.